There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when a person realizes that the world they've been blaming has never truly been in control. Not fate, not luck, not the economy, not the opinions of others. That moment doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't knock on your door or announce itself with fireworks. It slips in like a whisper between your doubts and your desires, asking a question most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Who is really in charge here? Because if your mind is not under your command, then everything else will be. And circumstance, cold, indifferent, relentless, will step in and take the throne. You will wake up reacting instead of creating. You will move according to pressure instead of purpose. You will think according to fear instead of faith. And slowly, subtly, you will become a product of everything around you instead of the architect of everything within you. But the truth, the dangerous, liberating, electrifying truth is this: the mind was never meant to be ruled by circumstance. It was designed to rule it. Your mind is not a passive observer of reality. It is the engine that generates it. And the moment you truly understand that, not intellectually, not casually, but with the full weight of your being, everything changes, because now the responsibility shifts. Now there are no excuses left to hide behind. Now there is no one else to blame. Now it becomes clear, if your life is not what you want it to be, it is not because you lack opportunity. It is because you have not yet mastered the battlefield within. The war is not out there. It never was. It is in the silent negotiations between your discipline and your distractions, between your vision and your doubt, between the version of you that wants comfort and the version of you that demands growth. Every day, without exception, one of those versions wins, and that winner shapes your reality. Understand this: circumstance is nothing more than a reflection, a shadow cast by the dominant patterns of your thoughts, beliefs, and actions. But most people never see the connection. They see the shadow and try to fight it directly. They try to fix the outside without ever touching the inside. And so they remain trapped, running in circles, exhausted, frustrated, convinced that life is something that happens to them. But you are not here to live that way. You are here to command your experience. And command begins with awareness. It begins with the ability to observe your own mind, not as a victim of it, but as the one who directs it. Because the mind left unattended does not default to greatness. It defaults to safety, to repetition, to fear. It clings to what is familiar, even when what is familiar is pain. It replays old failures as if they are prophecies. It magnifies obstacles until they feel immovable. It whispers lies that sound like truth. You're not ready. You don't have what it takes. This is just how life is. And if you do not challenge those whispers, they become commands. And those commands become your life. This is how circumstance takes control. Not through force, but through unquestioned thought. So the first act of mastery is rebellion. You must rebel against the automatic patterns that have been running your life. You must question the voice that tells you to stay small. You must confront the beliefs that keep you stuck. You must refuse to accept limitation as identity. Because your thoughts are not facts. They are suggestions. And you are the one who decides which suggestions to accept. Think about that. Every limitation you feel was once just a thought. Every fear that holds you back was once just a whisper. Every boundary in your life was first drawn in your mind before it ever appeared in your world. Which means if you can redraw the line in your mind, you can erase it in your reality. But this is not easy. Mastering the mind is not a one-time decision. It is a daily discipline, because the world will constantly try to pull you back into unconscious living. It will flood your attention with noise. It will tempt you with comfort. It will reward distraction and punish focus. And if you are not intentional, you will drift. And drifting always leads back to circumstance. So you must become deliberate in what you think. deliberate in what you believe, deliberate in what you focus on. Because focus is power. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and where your energy flows, your life grows. If you constantly focus on problems, you will become an expert in limitation. If you constantly focus on excuses, you will become fluent in failure. But if you focus on possibilities, if you train your mind to see opportunity where others see obstacles, then something extraordinary happens. You begin to shift, not just in what you do, but in who you are. And identity is everything, because your identity determines your standards. Your standards determine your actions, and your actions determine your results. So if you want to change your life, you don't start with your circumstances. You start with your self-concept. You ask yourself, who do I believe I am? Because that belief is the foundation of everything. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you will find reasons to stop. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you will interpret every challenge as proof. But if you decide, consciously, intentionally, to see yourself as someone who rises, someone who adapts, someone who finds a way no matter what, then your behavior begins to align with that identity. And slowly, steadily, your circumstances follow. This is the power most people never tap into. They wait for confidence before they act. They wait for clarity before they move. They wait for proof before they believe. But mastery requires the opposite. You act before you feel ready. You believe before you see results. You commit before you have guarantees. Because certainty is not something you find. It is something you create. And it is created through repetition, through showing up again and again and again, especially when you don't feel like it. Because discipline is the bridge between intention and reality. Without discipline, your goals are just wishes. Without discipline, your vision is just imagination. Without discipline, your potential remains trapped inside you, unexpressed, unrealized, unused. But with discipline, you become unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. You learn to override emotion with intention. You learn to choose action over comfort. You learn to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. And that is where transformation happens. Not in moments of inspiration, but in moments of resistance. Because resistance is the test. It is the moment where your old self tries to pull you back, where doubt gets louder, where excuses feel more convincing, where quitting seems reasonable. And if you give in, you reinforce the identity that keeps you stuck. But if you push through, even just a little, you send a message to your mind, I am in control. And that message, repeated enough times, rewires everything. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to rely on your own discipline instead of your feelings. You begin to build a foundation that cannot be shaken by circumstance. And from that foundation, something powerful emerges. Vision. Not vague dreams or wishful thinking, but a clear, compelling picture of the life you are building. Because without vision, the mind wanders. It gets distracted. It loses direction. It falls back into old patterns. But with vision, every action has purpose. Every sacrifice has meaning. Every challenge becomes part of the path instead of a reason to stop. Your vision becomes your anchor, the thing that keeps you grounded when everything around you feels uncertain. And uncertainty will come. Life will test you. It will throw obstacles in your path. It will delay your progress. It will challenge your belief in ways you cannot predict. And in those moments, the question returns, who is in control? If your mind is weak, circumstance will win. You will doubt. You will hesitate. You will retreat. But if your mind is strong, if you have trained it, disciplined it, mastered it, then something different happens. You adapt, you adjust, you find another way because you understand something most people don't. Circumstances are not permanent. They are temporary conditions, not final conclusions. And your response to them determines their power over you. If you see obstacles as barriers, they will stop you. But if you see them as challenges, they will shape you. If you see failure as defeat, it will break you. But if you see it as feedback, it will teach you. Perspective is everything. And perspective is a choice you make moment by moment, thought by thought. This is what it means to master your mind, not to eliminate difficulty, but to control your interpretation of it, because your interpretation creates your emotional state. Your emotional state drives your behavior, and your behavior creates your results. So if you want different results, you must start by thinking differently. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but consistently, relentlessly, with intention. Because the mind is like a muscle. If you don't train it, it weakens. If you don't challenge it, it stagnates. If you don't direct it, it drifts. But if you discipline it, if you push it, if you demand more from it, then it grows stronger, sharper, more resilient, and eventually it becomes your greatest weapon. A weapon against doubt, a weapon against fear, a weapon against the forces that try to keep you average. Because average is not a lack of talent. It is a lack of mental control. It is the result of living reactively instead of intentionally, of letting circumstance dictate direction instead of choosing it. But you were not built for average. You were built for creation, for growth, for expansion. And all of that begins in the mind. So ask yourself again, who is in control? Because every day, in every moment, you are either mastering your mind or being ruled by circumstance. And the choice, whether you realize it or not, is always yours. Because once that question becomes real to you, once it stops being philosophical and starts becoming personal, you begin to see your life through a different lens. You begin to notice patterns, not just in what happens to you, but in how you respond to what happens. You notice how quickly your mind searches for comfort when things get difficult, how it negotiates with your discipline, how it justifies delay, disguising it as logic. I'll start tomorrow. I need more time. I'm just not in the right mindset today. But those are not truths. They are escape routes. And every time you take one, you reinforce a dangerous habit, the habit of surrender. Surrendering your potential, surrendering your power, surrendering your future to the mercy of circumstance. And circumstance has no mercy. It does not care about your intentions. It does not reward your ideas. It does not respond to your wishes. It responds only to action. Decisive, consistent, intentional action, which means the life you want is not waiting for you somewhere in the future. It is being built or neglected in the choices you make right now, in the way you think right now, in the way you respond right now. Right now is where power lives, not in yesterday, which cannot be changed, not in tomorrow, which has not yet arrived, but in this moment. And yet most people abandon this moment completely. They live in regret of the past or anxiety about the future, and in doing so, they surrender the only point of control they actually have, the present. Mastery begins when you reclaim it, when you bring your awareness back to what you are doing, what you are thinking, what you are becoming, right here, right now, because presence sharpens your mind. It allows you to catch negative patterns before they take over. It allows you to redirect your focus before it drifts. It allows you to choose your response instead of reacting automatically. And that space, that tiny gap between stimulus and response is where your power is. That is where transformation happens. Because in that space, you are no longer a product of your past conditioning. You are a creator. You are free. Free to think differently. Free to act differently. Free to become someone new. But freedom without direction is chaos. So once you reclaim control of your mind, the next step is to give it a target, clarity, Because a powerful mind without a clear objective is like a weapon with no aim. It may have force, but it has no direction. And without direction, effort is wasted. Energy is scattered. Time is lost. That's why clarity is not optional, it is essential. You must know what you are moving toward. Not vaguely, not I want to be successful, not I want to be happy. Those are empty definitions. You must define success in your own terms. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does your life actually become when you reach it? Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing daily? What have you built? What have you overcome? You must see it so clearly in your mind that it begins to feel real, because the mind does not distinguish strongly between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced. And when you hold a vision with enough intensity, enough repetition, enough emotional connection, it begins to shape your behavior. It begins to pull you forward. This is where desire becomes power. But desire alone is not enough, because desire without commitment fades. It weakens under pressure. It disappears in the face of difficulty. That's why you must turn desire into decision. A decision is different. A decision cuts off alternatives. It eliminates negotiation. It says this is happening, no matter what. And when you reach that level of commitment, something shifts inside you. You stop asking if it's possible. You start figuring out how. You stop waiting for permission. You start creating opportunity. You stop fearing failure. You start using it. Because failure in the hands of a disciplined mind is not an endpoint. It is data. It is feedback. It is instruction. Every mistake carries a lesson. Every setback reveals a weakness. Every challenge exposes an area for growth, but only if you are willing to see it that way. Only if your mind is strong enough to interpret difficulty as development instead of defeat. This is where resilience is born. Not from avoiding struggle, but from confronting it, from stepping into discomfort instead of running from it, because discomfort is the gateway, the place where growth begins. Think about it. Every skill you have ever developed required discomfort. Every level you have ever reached demanded effort. Nothing meaningful came from staying in your comfort zone. And yet the mind constantly tries to pull you back into it, because comfort feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels easy. But comfort is also where progress dies, where dreams fade, where potential is wasted, because nothing grows there. So if you truly want to master your mind, you must become comfortable with discomfort. You must train yourself to move toward what is hard instead of away from it, to embrace challenge instead of avoiding it, to see effort not as something to endure, but as something to seek, because effort is the currency of growth. And the more willing you are to invest it, the more you expand. This is the difference between those who are ruled by circumstance and those who rise above it. One avoids pressure. The other uses it. One collapses under resistance. The other is strengthened by it. One waits for conditions to improve. The other improves themselves regardless of conditions. And that difference is not talent. It is mindset. A mindset that is built, not given. Forged through repetition, through discipline, through conscious effort, day after day, moment after moment, choice after choice. Because mastery is not a single act. It is a way of living. It is the result of consistently choosing growth over comfort, of choosing purpose over distraction, of choosing long-term vision over short-term relief. And those choices are not always easy. In fact, they are rarely easy, because the world is designed to distract you, to pull your attention in 1,000 different directions, to keep you entertained, occupied, comfortable, but not necessarily fulfilled. And if you are not careful, you will spend your life reacting to everything except what truly matters, scrolling instead of building, consuming instead of creating, talking instead of doing. And slowly, without realizing it, you will drift further away from the life you actually want. Not because you lack ability, but because you lack focus. Focus is a decision to eliminate the unnecessary, to ignore the irrelevant, to commit fully to what matters most, because every yes is a no to something else. Every moment spent on distraction is a moment taken away from your potential. And time is the one resource you cannot get back. So you must treat it with respect, with intention, with urgency, not panic but purpose. Because there is a difference. Panic is chaotic. It leads to rushed decisions, scattered effort, burnout. But purpose is calm. It is deliberate. It is focused. It knows where it is going and moves steadily in that direction, regardless of obstacles. And that steadiness, that consistency is what separates those who dream from those who achieve. Because anyone can feel motivated for a day. Anyone can take action when they feel inspired. But can you continue when the excitement fades? Can you show up when it becomes routine? Can you stay committed when results are slow? That is the real test, because success is not built on intensity alone. It is built on consistency, on doing the work again and again, even when it feels repetitive, even when it feels difficult, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Because something is happening. You are building momentum. You are strengthening discipline. You are reinforcing identity. You are becoming the kind of person who follows through. And that identity, more than anything else, is what creates lasting change. Because once you see yourself as someone who does what they say they will do, everything shifts. You no longer rely on motivation. You rely on standards. You no longer wait for the right feeling. You act based on commitment. And that is power. Real power. The kind that cannot be taken from you. The kind that does not depend on circumstance. Because it comes from within. From the mind you have trained, disciplined, mastered. But there is another layer, another level that separates those who succeed temporarily from those who sustain it. And that is gratitude, not passive gratitude. Not the kind that simply acknowledges what is good, but active gratitude, the kind that transforms how you see everything. Because when you are grateful, you are not focused on what is missing. You are focused on what is present, and that shift in focus changes your emotional state. It creates strength. It creates stability. It creates perspective. Because no matter how difficult your situation is, there is always something to be grateful for. And when you train your mind to find it, you build resilience. You build the ability to stay grounded even in chaos, to remain focused even in uncertainty, to keep moving forward even when things are not perfect. Because perfection is not required. Progress is. And progress belongs to those who keep going, those who adapt, those who learn, those who refuse to let circumstance define their limits. Because life will not always go according to plan. Things will change. Unexpected challenges will arise. Opportunities will disappear. And if your mind is rigid, you will break. But if your mind is adaptable, you will evolve. Adaptability is strength. It is the ability to adjust without losing direction, to change your approach without abandoning your goal, to remain flexible in method but firm in purpose. And that is what allows you to navigate uncertainty, to turn obstacles into opportunities, to find paths where others see dead ends. Because the truth is, there is always a way, but only for those who are willing to look for it, only for those who refuse to quit, only for those who have trained their minds to see possibility where others see limitation. So as you continue forward, as you build discipline, clarity, focus, resilience, remember this: the world will not hand you control. You must take it, not by force, but by mastery. Mastery of your thoughts, mastery of your emotions, mastery of your actions. Because when you master those, you master your life. And when you master your life, circumstance no longer has power over you. It becomes something you respond to, not something that defines you. And that is freedom, not the absence of challenge, but the presence of control. The control to choose your path, the control to shape your reality, the control to become who you were always capable of being. And that control begins and ends in the mind.